some of you, this may be a very familiar story. For some of you, this may be a new story, and if it's a new story for you, it's going to be harsh and it's going to sound weird, but I just invite you to stick with it. So Genesis 4, 1 through 16. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. Next she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought the firstlings of his flock, their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain said to his brother Abel, Let us go out to the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is your brother Abel? And he said, I do not know. Why am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me. Then the Lord said to him, Not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, so that no one who came upon him would kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So this morning we're going to be beginning a new series that's going to take us into the end of June, and we'll take our pauses for like at the beginning of the month when we talk about the miracles, and we have those times, and we'll be enjoying when Howard shares with us. He's not continuing the series. Enjoying, yes, I'm saying enjoying. It's my encouragement. So no, but when we get to have Howard share with us, we'll be taking those breaks. But for the most part, from now to the end of the June, we're going to be doing this new series. And the people in this room, we don't all have a uniform history with the Bible. Some of us may have attended Sunday school and have been listening to Bible stories since we are quite young, or even have attended Bible college or have a significant history with the Bible. Some of us might be very new to the Bible, and some of these stories that we're going to tell might even be brand new to our ears. But whether we're new to the Bible or not, we all are familiar with the stories that contain heroes and villains. There's many versions of this. Sometimes we even have like the superhero and the supervillain that you can find in a comic book. Sometimes we have the criminal and the sleuth that you'd find like in a mystery story. The one that comes to me anytime I hear this word villain most readily is from the series Rocky and Bullwinkle. Did anybody watch that? Okay, so this was a cartoon show from the 80s, and the hero, there's lots of little caveats and little shorts in it, but one of them, there was this unlikely hero, Dudley Do-Right, the Canadian mounted police officer, and the villain who was Snidely Whiplash. And when I hear the word villain, I immediately picture Snidely Whiplash with his curly mustache, right? And this black hat. And those things always gave him away, that as soon as he showed up on screen, you knew he was the bad guy. Even when Dudley Do-Right didn't recognize him, we could see he was the bad guy. So the point of all this is to say that we have a habit of telling stories that is made up of good guys and bad guys, or heroes and villains. And our habit of doing this has led us to read the stories in the Bible in the same way. In fact, many of the stories we even specifically tell as hero and villain stories. There's a lot of children's material that even frames it this way, the stories of heroes and villains from the Bible. But this is not accurate. So the series is us looking at the Bible for these stories that are often told as hero and villain stories, and then re-examining them as not a hero and villain story. So our series is Hero and Villains Not. So this rhetoric of good guys and bad guys is so pervasive in our minds that we often take that dynamic and we actually apply it to people. We actually apply it to people we know. We even start to look at other people and the people we know, the people in our lives. We even start to look as ourselves, and we are constantly trying to assess, is this a good guy? Is this a bad guy? Am I a good person or a bad person? Are we heroes? Who's the hero and who's the villain in every interaction? But this is not an accurate way of evaluating humanity. Humans are not divided into good guys and bad guys. And this inaccurate view that we have keeps us from the truth that these stories in the Bible might actually be telling us when we just reduce them to these inaccurate pictures of heroes and villains. So this morning, we're starting with the story of Cain and Abel, and it is a difficult story because it's a story with two brothers that end up in this very tragic ending. And in this story, we often use this as the example, the conclusion. Cain is the villain and Abel is the innocent victim. And we think this partly because it's true. Cain commits evil against an undeserving Abel. Cain is wrong, and Abel is a victim. But the misgiving in creating a hero-villain dynamic in the story is not that we see that what Cain did was terrible. It was terrible. Or that what happened to Abel shouldn't have. He didn't deserve it. The misgiving is when we think that's what the problem actually is. Because then we get derailed in a couple of different ways. One is that we start to believe that evil is sourced within actions. That Cain is the bad guy and he's evil in the story because of the actions that he did. That Cain was wrong only once he killed Abel. But that's not where things went sideways. And if we do this, if we believe that that's the source of the problem, if that's the source of what made Cain the bad guy, then it leads us to start thinking that we are merely a sum of our actions. And as long as we can control our actions, and as long as we can control the results of what's happening up in our lives, then we can just make sure that we stay on that good equation of good guys, bad guys. But the truth is that the problem is much deeper than that. Cain's actions were deplorable, but it came from something deep within him. It came from something within him that started long before he took Abel out to the field. And then even if we can get to this truth, we can understand and we can see, okay, we're not just the sum of our actions, and our actions are not solely where goodness or badness lies, then sometimes we go ahead and get stuck in this thinking of, well, it's all just inherent. We're either good or bad from the start. It's something that is within our hearts and it can't be changed. It's just destiny. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. But it wasn't inevitable that Cain was going to be the bad guy in the story. Both Cain and Abel had sin in them. Both of them did. Both of them needed to offer sacrifices. This happened, that was clear from the beginning, before even anything took place. Both of them needed God. They were very much in need of God. And this is the kind of reason why it matters for us to look beyond that hero-villain version of the story. Because before Cain lost his temper and murdered Abel, there was something that took place. There's this encounter where God is displeased with Cain, but he's pleased with Abel. They're both offering sacrifices bent from what they have, but one is pleasing and one is not. And when that happens, Cain is very angry about it. God even challenges Cain about this resentment that he's carrying around, worrying or warning him that this is going to lead to something bigger, that he at that point has a choice. This is not an obscure detail. This is the main significant part of the story because we even hear about it later on in the book of Hebrews. In Hebrews 11, 3-4, it says, "By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous, when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead." If we simply read that Cain had bad actions, therefore he's a bad person, or Cain was just going to be inherently a bad guy and it was inevitable that he was going to be the villain of this story, then we ignore this detail about God rejecting Cain's offering. And that part just actually no longer matters to the story. We reject this idea that there was something to do with Abel's faith that changed how God saw him. And I think those details are actually, they matter a great deal in the story. When we reduce that God is approving simply based on our actions, we become obsessed with labeling and determining what are right actions and what are bad ones. And I've seen this done with this story. I have heard people try to explain that there was something inherent in the sacrifice itself, that there was some sort of difference between the fact that Abel was offering up the fat portions from his lambs, but Cain was offering up something from his produce. That's the difference, and where the problem lies. And we have to figure out what that difference is in order to make sure that we address our actions and how we do things to make sure that we're pleasing to God. But this kind of mindset just gets us distracted and obsessed with constantly trying to figure out our own actions, constantly trying to find the solution of how we can do and say the right things to please God. I should do this, you should do that. It becomes a burden, and it is become completely obsessed with ourselves and our actions and the actions of others. And when we do this, I think we actually lose sight of what God had intended for how we relate to him. I think God had something different in mind for how his children are with him. I've also heard some versions of Cain was simply not the chosen one. God liked Abel better than Cain, and Cain was rejected. There was some sort of malformity there, and so no matter what Cain did, it was never going to be good enough. And I think this mindset might even be worse than the other one, because we start to believe this lie that, either I'm the special chosen one or I'm not. And if I start to think I am the special chosen one, then I start to look at the others because they didn't make the cut. There must be something wrong with them. There must be something bad with them, and there's no possibility of it getting better. We start to believe this lie of we are the good guys, they are the bad guys. But I think there's another way that we can read the story. There's lots of things that we can get from the story. I'm not going to get into all the things, but I want to talk about this one specifically. God rejected Cain's offering and accepted Abel's because he is God and he can do that. We can use a lot of different phrases or terminology to describe this. The phrase that I think of when I think of this is a phrase called sovereign discretion. It's meaning God can and will determine what he will accept and what he will reject, regardless of our take on it. And this is something that is not very comfortable for us. This is a notion that makes us very uncomfortable. And if your initial reaction to this idea is kind of reject the fact that God is sovereign and can do whatever he wants, and he is right in all circumstances, that's not a surprise. We are very much conditioned, especially in our culture, to not think this way. But I want to spend a couple moments this morning talking about why this matters and why it might actually be a good thing. Many of us like to be in control. We like to handle things. And I think for a lot of us, it's because we've been disappointed too many times. I would just rather take care of it myself, thank you very much. It's too risky to actually trust somebody else. And if we do let someone else take care of something, then we really have to check up on them to make sure that it's going to meet our standards. The problem is that God is not accountable to us. If he was, he would not be God. God is not a fallible human being. He does not get tired. He doesn't forget. He doesn't just not feel like it anymore. He doesn't have a bad mood one day. He doesn't change his mind. He doesn't just stop loving us. He doesn't bring his emotional baggage from his childhood. He's not still figuring things out. God sees things and he knows things that we could never comprehend. He can see and he could see and know things about Cain and Abel that were beyond just their outward actions and beyond their inclinations. God could see their hearts their desires, and his approval or disapproval was correct even when we cannot explain why. He was right and he was just in how he saw them and how he treated them simply because he is God. And while this is scary for us, it's scary for us to let go of that idea of needing control. The truth is that if we really get down into those spaces where we're honest with ourselves, we realize that our control is insufficient as well. When we are confronted with the fact that we trust ourselves more than anyone else, but we also realize that we let ourselves down, that's where this becomes a very good thing. Because when I'm honest about my own limitations, I do find great comfort and great relief. I find the fact that God does not answer to me to be a source of comfort. I'm glad that he is above all of my failings and my limits, and that I can place my trust in something that is more than just myself. And this trust is further bolstered by the fact that he's not just God who is able. He has the ability to have this discretion beyond my understanding, but it's also because he is good. And many of us struggle to think that God isn't accountable to us because we have seen so many times that once there is somebody in a place of authority or control, none of them are ever good enough to be let loose without accountability. It's never once ever happened in the history of humankind where somebody had that kind of authority and it didn't go sideways unless they had accountability. But God is not human. Not only his ability and what he knows and comprehends and is able to do is beyond human ability, but his goodness is beyond human goodness. This is especially clear this week, as last week was Easter, and we spent this holiday where we celebrated the God who came and suffered and died for us, and then he rose again that we might be given freely eternal life. God's goodness is so pervasive and it's so immense that it literally broke death. So yeah, we might struggle to live out this faith that truly trusts a God that is not accountable to us, but it's not because he doesn't deserve it. There is nothing more that God needs to do to prove that he is good and he is trustworthy. He's done everything he can. We have no excuses not to trust him. When we struggle with our own lack of faith, it's because of our struggle with our own lack of faith. We struggle with not knowing how God works. We struggle with not having all the answers. We struggle with the whys. But it's not because he doesn't deserve it. Faith is not the absence of doubt or the fact that we feel uncomfortable. Faith is allowing there to be the mystery that we do not fully understand everything, but still knowing that God is good and able. And this last reason that he is good and able, that we can trust in that, is why it matters to see this specific story in this way. Because this story then is more real. It's more conducive to reality. God didn't give us the story of Cain and Abel and tell us to be like Abel, but don't be like Cain. God gave us the story to show us a path to follow about trusting him and following him. Cain and Abel were not simply reduced to the sum of their actions, and neither are we. No matter how hard, we will never truly be able to master this list of doing all the right things and avoiding the bad ones. And that is a burden that God did not lay on us. He did not ask us to find the path of just doing right action. He asks us to find the path of being in right relationship with him. Not to be obsessed with evaluating our actions, but to be obsessed with him. Wanting to be with him and to hear his voice. And that is not also something that we're either born to do or not to do. That's not something that is inevitable for us or chosen for us. No one is stuck being a good guy or a bad guy. It's not an inevitability. And we see this in the story as well. I can't help it. I've always wondered this, even when I was a little girl. I always found it interesting that God spent so much time speaking to and with and trying to work with Cain. There's no details about God having conversations with Abel in this story. But time and time again, he goes and he confronts Cain. He speaks warnings to Cain. He speaks admonishment to Cain. and he also extends grace to Cain. Cain was not stuck to be the villain. He wasn't doomed to a life with a curly mustache and a black hat. But it was up to Cain how he would respond to God. It was up to Cain how he would respond when God did speak to him. And that is the exact same for us. There is no one in this room who is stuck. If you're struggling, or if you're having a hard time, or you feel like it's just inevitable that you're going to be the bad guy, you are not. God is reaching out and he is talking to each one of us, and he invites us into something different. He invites us to trust him, to listen to him, and to follow him. And then it is up to us as to how we respond. Let's pray. God, we are grateful that you are God, which means that you do not answer to us. You are not limited by parameters we set up for you. We respond to you, God. We ask that even though it makes us uncomfortable, that we take the time to embrace and acknowledge that. Not just because it's true, but also because in reality, it's good for us. As much as we like to think that we are the best person for the job, it's not true. We're going to make mistakes too. And so, God, it's good for us to acknowledge that you are the God who is able. And then it's good for us to remember and to relive and to tell those stories, not only that we see in the Bible, but also the ones that we have had happen in our own lives, those times when you have shown up for us, to know that you are not just the God who is able, but you are the God who is good. You are the God who loves us and wants good things for us. And it's easy for us to lose sight of that sometimes, to let fear or doubt diminish that. It's the reason why you ask us to remember who you are on a regular basis, so that we can hold fast to the fact that you are good, and good in a way that it defines the word itself. And God, we ask that we let go of these lies that we tell ourselves, that we're stuck in a certain place, or that it's too late for us, or there's nothing more we can do. And we ask that we listen for your voice, and then we have the ability to respond to it. That we can go ahead and accept those invitations that you extend to us, God. That when we hear your voice, that we receive it, and then we act on it. God, this is our prayer. In your name, amen.